At 2:30 a.m., Lars calls Sandra again and he tells her that I left. I couldn't stay in that hotel. And then, in a very quiet, very soft voice, he tells his mom, 4 men are following me. And then he says, I'm up high and I could fall down. Hello everybody, welcome back for another true crime. If you are new here, hello, my name is Leah and I'm really passionate about researching and talking about true crime. I will be totally honest, I was having some doubts about continuing with this channel. It's such a oversaturated genre. And honestly, I usually feel like no one wants to hear anything from me other than whispered ASMR. But then I just kind of said, fuck it, and I came back. I did try to do the whole faceless YouTuber thing, but you crazy kids weren't having any of that, so hello. So today I'm going to be telling you about the disappearance of Lars Mittank. And this was a young man who, while vacationing with friends, began acting very strangely. He began acting like he was in fear for his life, and then all of a sudden, he disappeared. But the most haunting part of today's case is the fact that Lars's last moments and his last steps were actually caught on security footage. And this footage shows him essentially running for his life, but we have no idea who or what he was running from. He disappeared in 2014. He has never been seen since, and it's a complete mystery as to what really happened. And the information that we do have is filled with holes, conflicting reports, and very sketchy situations, all of which combined make me think that something much more menacing was going on. Lars Mittank has actually been named as the most famous missing person on YouTube. So I know that this case has been covered multiple times, but as always, you never know who this video could reach. When I was talking to my mother-in-law about this, she had never heard of the case. So I think getting it out there as much as possible is important. So stick around if you want to hear about this missing person. So first things first, I have to credit the YouTube channel called Insolito, the podcast called Voices for Justice, the website All That Interesting, and then another podcast called The Evidence Locker. All of these were the main sources that I listened to and gathered information from in order to establish the very detailed timeline that I'll be telling you about. I did look at other sources as well, but these were the main ones, and of course I will list all of those down below. So get ready, get comfortable, grab yourself some tea or a snack, and yeah, let's settle in, and I'm going to tell you all about the very strange, mysterious disappearance of Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank was born in Marni, Germany on February 9th, 1986. And according to friends and family, he was a very regular, very happy guy. He had a close group of friends from school. He had a girlfriend that he was very serious about. He was very athletic and very into sports, with one of his biggest passions and hobbies being soccer. And with that, he was a huge supporter of his local soccer team called Werder Bremen. He went to school for precision engineering, and he worked as a power plant operator in the town of Wilhelmshaven. Now for work, he did live quite a distance from his parents. It was about 150 kilometers, I believe. So that kind of sucked because he was very close with his parents, but he traveled home as often as he could to spend time with them, especially after his father had a stroke. And then in June of 2014, when Lars was 28 years old, he and 5 friends decided to go on a little getaway. And I do think that it's important to point this out because one of the conspiracy theories on Lars's whereabouts today is that he possibly disappeared on purpose. Like, people believe maybe he was unhappy and he wanted to start a new, fresh life with a completely new identity. But, as I said, he had a very close group of friends. He had a serious girlfriend. He was very close with his parents. He loved his job. So everything seemed really good. And just before the boys went on this holiday, Lars's mother, Sandra, she even visited with Lars in Wilhelmshaven, and she said that Lars seemed very happy. Like, he even told her that he was thinking about buying his first house. And obviously, that's not always a sign that somebody is happy, but in general, making plans for one's future is a very good sign for a happy and positive mental state. Again, not always, but I do think that that is important to point out in this case. On June 30th, the friends flew to the city of Varna, Bulgaria, and I believe the flight from Germany to Bulgaria is roughly a few hours, so it is a long distance, but it's not really that far. From there, they traveled to a very popular tourist town called Golden Sands, and they stayed at the all-inclusive beach resort, which was called Hotel Viva. And Varna, Bulgaria, is located along the Black Sea coast. And this area is referred to as the Bulgarian Riviera. So it's beautiful. It is sunny, inexpensive, and it is a very popular tourist destination, especially with really young people who are looking for a beautiful, cheap party spot. And I read that this area is comparable to like Miami for spring break. It's basically like a European Miami or Ibiza. That's what a lot of people referred to it as or compared it to. And according to Insolito and Lars Mittank's mother, this place was not a typical holiday choice for Lars. So from the beginning, it was a little bit strange. Like, Lars was a very sporty, very health-conscious guy, and he would always choose more active type of vacations, like diving or fishing trips, something where he could be active and not just sit by a pool and drink and party all day. And that is basically what the majority of people do in these resort towns. But work was really stressful. He was very busy with helping to care for his father, and he needed a vacation. And his friends were already going, so he decided to tag along. And Sandra said that he was really looking forward to this vacation. She said that he even purposely left his main phone in Germany, and he did this because he didn't want to be distracted by work and emails and all of that stuff that we have access to on our phones. He did bring a burner phone with prepaid minutes though, like just so that he could stay in contact with his parents and in case of an emergency. And just in case anyone doesn't know what a burner phone is, it's just a very cheap little phone that you can buy at a corner store, and they have prepaid minutes on them. So once you've used it up for calls or text messages or to a certain point, they're just done and you can literally just throw it away. And I've never used one, but from what I understand, these burner phones are completely untraceable. And this is important because this burner phone does come back into the story later on. According to the group of friends, they had an amazing time. Like when interviewed after Lars disappeared, his friend Paul Roman had the following to say: "The week went by really fast. We relaxed on the beach, we swam in the pool, played football, went clubbing. He, Lars, was relaxed. He was in a good mood." Another friend pointed out the fact that Lars hadn't eaten much. Tim Schultz said that, "I noticed he didn't eat much. He'd have a bowl of soup or a small plate of salad, and that was it." And a lot of people do try to link this little tidbit of information to something much bigger. Like Lars was stressed out or he was upset about something and that's why he wasn't eating. But apparently it was 40 degrees in Varna during their trip, which is hot. That's hot. And during the days, Lars was spending a lot of time at the beach playing soccer with locals. And all of the locals said that he was super nice. He wasn't acting weird. Nothing seemed off. And then another local person who recognized Lars and said that nothing seemed off or strange about him was a local fruit vendor. And he said that Lars stopped by his fruit stand every day on their trip to get fresh fruit. So Lars was exercising, playing soccer every day in very hot weather in the summer, and just eating fresh fruit, salad, soup. Doesn't really sound too weird, right? So I think it's kind of, people are stretching it a little bit when they say that him not eating has something to do with his disappearance. I don't really see that. But anyway, from what I've read and from what I've listened to, nothing really significant happened those first few days. The group was having a great time. Lars was very happy, he was having fun, and they were really enjoying themselves. It was on July 3rd, however, where things took a very weird turn. So in 2014, there was a soccer World Cup, and this was a huge deal, especially for Lars, because remember, he loved soccer. And this particular night, he was even wearing his home team's jersey. So the group of friends go out to a bar near the hotel, which was called the Rock Bar, and they went to just have some beers and watch the soccer game that night that was between Costa Rica and the Netherlands. And each table in the bar that night had flags on it, and these flags represented the countries for the competing soccer teams. And this is a tradition that I didn't know about. I only just learned it, and it's called exchanging of flags, and this is apparently a really big deal in soccer. And basically, you exchange your team's flag with the opposing team's flag. And this is just done as a sign of mutual respect and sportsmanship between the teams and the fans. So exchanging flags is just meant to be good fun and good respect for everybody watching the game. And Lars and his friends, along with everybody in the bar that night, were doing this. But this is where things get weird, because apparently a group of young guys in the bar that night did not like this exchanging of flags. Like, they thought that it was disrespectful or weird. Something happened that we don't know the details of, but something happened. And they started an argument with Lars and his group, and things got really heated. Some think that Lars probably had a few too many beers, and perhaps he made a comment or a joke about one of the teams. And for whatever reason, this group of guys did not like that. And this group of guys was described as a young group of locals who were believed to have just graduated from high school. So they were very young. And when this argument broke out, there wasn't an actual physical fight in the bar, but somebody in that group of young men told Lars something to the extent of, quote, it's really not that hard to hire somebody to beat somebody up for a little money. So yeah, like, Lars was directly threatened, but they didn't really seem very worried about this at the time, which I don't get. Like, if I was in a different country and somebody said that to me, I'd be pretty worried, but nothing happened. The group stayed in the bar and they partied until about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they finally headed out. So it was here where the group wanted to go get food from McDonald's before heading back to the hotel. Lars, however, didn't like McDonald's, and he told his friends that he would just go and wait for them a short distance from the restaurant. When his friends got their food and headed out, they noticed that they couldn't see Lars anywhere. But being grown adults, they weren't really overly concerned, and they just assumed that Lars had gone back to the hotel on his own. So they just headed back to the hotel as well, and they went to bed. It wasn't until the following morning when they woke up that they realized that something bad had happened. Lars had actually been attacked while they were waiting for their food or while they were walking back. But Lars tells his friends, yeah, I was jumped by a group of men who were either Russian or Bulgarian. And he believed that it had been a group that was hired from the guys in the bar. Like, Lars believed that that guy had gone through with his threat, and he had hired somebody to follow him and beat him up. Lars said that he ducked in order to avoid one of their punches, and he ended up being struck on the ear, which actually ruptured his eardrum. And now he tells his friends that his ear is killing him. That same morning, he calls his girlfriend. He lets her know that he got in a fight, and she urges him to go to the doctor to get his ear checked out. But for whatever reason, he doesn't want to. Like, I guess he thinks maybe his injuries just weren't serious enough. But again, he did admit that his ear was really sore. Another little interesting nugget of information here is that Lars's friends didn't fully believe him. For some reason, they thought that he may have been leaving information out, or that he wasn't being entirely truthful about this fight, because he had no other physical injuries. And if that's true, that is awful. But again, this could just be speculation. This could just be something that was made up. None of us were there, but I did find it, so I wanted to add it in here. But anyways, the group's return flight back to Germany was on the 7th. So they had 2 more days in Bulgaria to enjoy themselves. And I guess Lars just decided to push through the pain, and he tried to have fun for those last couple of days of the vacation. And this is something that I have to point out because so many theories revolve around Lars possibly having sustained a head injury from this fight. And a lot of people think that this head injury may have caused him to hallucinate or develop paranoia or something like that. And people think that this possibly played a major role in his disappearance. But as I just said, the group spent 2 more days in Bulgaria with Lars, and they didn't notice any alarming issues or concerns over his mental state. Like, they didn't notice anything like that. And wouldn't you notice something like that with your friend? You would, right? Like, his ear was definitely very sore from the ruptured eardrum, but his personality and his mental state was fine. So Monday comes along, and the group is supposed to fly home that night back to Germany. But Lars's ear is so sore. That was when he was finally like, okay, my ear is not getting better. Maybe I should go to a doctor before we get on the plane. And he was concerned over the air pressure on the flight. Like, he was thinking, what if this causes further damage to my eardrum? That's going to be a big deal, especially for my career. He pops into a doctor's office, they look in his ear, and they say, yeah, your eardrum is indeed ruptured, and you cannot fly home tonight because the change in air pressure could do further damage. And then they refer him to an ears, nose, and throat specialist at the local hospital called St. Anna for a closer exam. So yeah, he was not flying home with his friends that night as scheduled. Now, his friends are willing to stay with him a couple of extra days in Bulgaria while his ear heals, but Lars tells them, no, I'll be totally fine. Like, Lars had travel insurance, and he didn't want to hold his friends up. He didn't want to make them late for work. And he completely insisted that he would be fine. So Lars hangs out with them that night until 8 o'clock p.m. when they catch a shuttle from the hotel back to Varna Airport, and Lars stays behind. At 8:40 p.m., he goes to the hospital in a taxi, and he gets examined by the ENT specialist. And this is where the case really just starts to snowball with weird occurrences. And you're going to understand why. So Lars hangs out with his friends that night until about 8 o'clock p.m. They then take a shuttle from the hotel to Varna Airport, and they go home. Lars takes a taxi to the hospital. At about 8:40 p.m., Lars gets examined at the hospital by the ENT, and this is just another super weird part of the case. So after his visit in the hospital, Lars told his mom that the doctor that he saw, who I'm assuming was Bulgarian, was extremely rude to him. Like, extremely rude during the whole visit. And I mean, a doctor in a hospital being rude isn't anything new. I'm sure we've all experienced that. But with everything else that happens in this case, I do find it kind of weird. Lars said that this doctor was, quote, mocking him and he refused to speak to him in English. According to Sandra Mittank, quote, "The ENT specialist did not want to understand Lars and did not want to talk to him in English. He refused any communication." So I'm assuming that English was probably the common language between both of them, and that the doctor could speak in English, but he refused to do so, which was just really weird, right? But at the same time, I was a little confused about this part because other sources say that this doctor recommended that Lars get surgery to repair his eardrum. So I don't know, maybe he was communicating with him a little bit, or maybe he got somebody else to say this to him. I'm not sure. But it didn't matter because Lars refused the surgery. He said that he would feel much more comfortable having that done back home in Germany. And because he didn't want to have the surgery, the doctor was concerned about Lars developing an ear infection. So he ended up just giving him a prescription for antibiotics. So yeah, Lars leaves the hospital with the prescription and he takes a cab to go and get the prescription filled at a local pharmacy. For whatever reason, the first pharmacy was unable to fill it. I believe they could only fill a certain number of tablets, which they didn't have packaging for. So he had to go to a second pharmacy to have it filled. He gets back into the same taxi, and as I said, this is where things take an even weirder turn, and things really just start to spiral downhill very quickly from here. Lars gets his second prescription. He gets back into the cab, and he asks the cab driver to take him to a cheap motel. And the cab driver even says, like it's summer, it's the busiest season, most of the hotels are fully booked, but I can take you to a place called Hotel Color. And this place was cheap, it was closer to the airport, and it sounded like the perfect stop. So this hotel is in a pretty rough neighborhood, and it was no longer like within the bounds of the really beautiful tourist area. And just from everything that I've read, at least at the time, it was pretty sketchy. And it was grounds for a lot of very shady people conducting their very shady business. Okay? So, yeah, Lars says that sounds good, and they take off towards Hotel Color. When they get to the hotel, Lars is about to walk to a convenience store that is like right next to the hotel because he needs to go get some water, but he didn't end up doing that because there was this group of really sketchy looking guys standing outside the store. And he didn't want to mess with that again, so he just headed right into the hotel. The cab driver said that Lars paid him his fare, he tipped him, he went inside, and that was the last that he saw of him. From here, Lars checks in, and he has to give the hotel his credit card, which very standard, right? But he told his mom that the hotel employee copied his credit card, meaning they took a physical copy of it. And Lars was pretty rightfully concerned about this. And in 2014, I don't really understand why they would do that either. You put the card information in your computer. If the card is declined, you know right away, right? And the only time I have ever had to copy a credit card was when I worked in retail. And 2 times our power went out in the store. So with the POS systems down, people could still make purchases as long as they had a credit card. But you had to use one of those little machines where you run it over the card and it creates a copy on top of all of these little pieces of paper. So you have the physical information. And even when I did that, people didn't like it, but they wanted to buy their clothes, so they would allow it. So I don't know. Like, the power was on 2014. Why did they make a copy of the card? I'd be suspicious as well, you know? But anyway, this brings us back to the burner phone that I mentioned at the beginning. So at this point, Lars calls his mom from his phone and he lets her know that the minutes on the phone are about to run out. And I'm not like, I understand that people need to disconnect from devices nowadays. Like, I understand the appeal of not bringing your smartphone so you're not distracted while you're on vacation. But again, when I do these kinds of videos, I do like to mention the popular conspiracy theories. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do think it's interesting to point some of them out. And one of these theories is that Lars had maybe somehow gotten caught up with the wrong kind of people back in Germany. So if you put that together with the fact that his own mom said that this type of vacation was very odd or off for Lars to go on, and that coupled with the fact that he didn't bring his phone, which is something that could have been tracked, people believe that he was maybe running from something or somebody back in Germany and he was trying to start a new life. Is that theory really far-fetched? Yes. Did he likely only bring a burner phone because he wanted to switch off for the vacation? Yes. But it's interesting nonetheless, and I wanted to mention it. So anyways, Lars got settled into the hotel room. He went to the hotel bar to get some water. He took the first dose of medication, and at 11 o'clock, he gets his mom to add some more minutes to his burner phone. And once that was done, he called her back, and he finally told her everything that had happened. He told her about the fight, his ruptured eardrum, the reason why he couldn't get on the plane. He tells her about the rude doctor who mocked him. And then he asked her if she could please start an insurance claim for transportation home since he couldn't fly. And this is why I kind of think that the conspiracy theories around Lars wanting to start a new life in Bulgaria are kind of ridiculous. Like, he wanted nothing more than to get home to Germany. And Sandra said the following about that conversation. She said he was troubled. He said he had an argument with soccer fans, was hit in the ear, and said that the hospital doctor mocked him and sent him away laughing. He also asked me to call foreign health insurance because he wanted to be brought home with patient transport. So he wants to go home. So Sandra starts the claim for him, but as I'm sure she knew, and you guys know, these types of things can take a really long time to get started. So she ended up booking a bus ticket for Lars herself. She just wanted him to have transportation back to Germany no matter how long it would take. So she got the ticket. That wouldn't leave until the next night. So it was just for peace of mind, knowing that he did have a way to leave Bulgaria. Because at this point, Lars is getting very suspicious about the hotel and he is panicking. Like, he literally tells Sandra over the phone, I cannot stay here. I cannot stay in this hotel. He tells his mom that the clerk copied his credit card, which again was super bizarre, but now he's really worried that the hotel is stealing his banking information, and he feels like somebody is getting ready to rob him. And he asks his mom, can you call my bank in Germany and can you get them to put a hold on my credit card? And at first, Sandra doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to cancel his credit card because he's in a foreign country and he needs money to get home. Or what if there's an emergency? And he tells her mom, don't worry, I have enough cash on me. I'll be fine. Please just cancel my credit card. So she calls his bank and she asks them to put a temporary hold on the card, and they say they can't do that. The only thing they can do is completely cancel it. So she calls Lars back. She says all they can do is cancel the card, and he says, yeah, cancel it because something is not right here. So she cancels the card. And then all she can really do at that point is try to reassure Lars that everything is going to be okay. You know, he's got a reserved bus ticket for 11:30 p.m. the next night. So no matter what happens, he has a way to get home. And although she's really worried about him at this point, again, she just tries to reassure him that it's going to be fine. Like, she tells him, go get some sleep. Get ready for the big day ahead. And yeah, if he was going to be traveling by bus, it was going to be a really long, tiring ride from Bulgaria all the way back to Germany. So they hang up. They're feeling a little bit better now that there's a plan in place, but that security doesn't last. Lars calls her only a short time later, again saying how unsafe he feels. He tells her, quote, something is wrong with the hotel. From how and what he was saying, she believes that Lars believed that his room was bugged. Like, he thinks people in the hotel are listening to his conversation. He feels like the room is bugged, which in his defense, could totally be true. And he also feels like he's being watched. He tells Sandra, quote, I have to get out of here. Hotel security cameras showed Lars pacing up and down the hallway of the hotel. He was suspiciously peering out windows like he was looking for somebody, and he was seen hiding in an elevator and peeking out as well. At 2:30 a.m., Lars calls Sandra again, and he tells her that I left. I couldn't stay in that hotel. And then, in a very quiet, very soft voice, he tells his mom, 4 men are following me. And then he says, I'm up high and I could fall down. I cannot even imagine what his mom was going through at that point. She must have been losing her mind. When interviewed, Sandra said, quote, I thought, God, my son is in danger. I could hear his heart pounding over the phone. He said that people were trying to rob him or kill him. And I have to wonder, were the 4 men who were following him, was that the same group that he had seen when he arrived to Hotel Color? Like the sketchy group that stopped him from going to the store? Maybe this was just a group of people who were hanging around the hotel, waiting to prey on tourists. But then that wouldn't really make a lot of sense because apparently this was not a touristy area whatsoever. As the cab driver said, this was definitely a very sketchy, rough neighborhood of Varna. So maybe it was just a group of bad people waiting around for a good opportunity. I don't know. The other possibility is, could this have been the group of people who had beaten him up and caused his ear injury? Like, did they just happen to be hanging around in this neighborhood and they saw Lars? And if they recognized him, maybe they saw that he was no longer with his friends, and maybe they saw him and targeted him to rob him this time or start another fight. I don't know. And I'm also really curious to know what you guys think. What do you think he meant when he said I'm up high and I could fall down? Some sources do say that he was on a hill hiding, but I don't know. Looking at this area on Google Earth, like I don't see many hills. So I don't know, like maybe he climbed up on a roof. I don't know. I have no idea. Sandra said that after that phone call, she was too terrified to call her son back because she was worried that if he was in a hiding spot, she didn't want the light from the phone or the ringer to give his position away. So literally all she could do was wait and pray that her son was all right. This poor mom. At 3:06 a.m., Sandra receives a text message from her son, and all it said was, quote, Cefsil 500, what is this? And Cefsil 500 was the name of the antibiotic that the doctor from St. Anna Hospital had prescribed to Lars for his ruptured eardrum. And then at 3:15 a.m., he sends the exact same message again. He desperately wanted to know what the drug was. So from home, Sandra looks the drug up and she sees that it's medication for his ear. But again, she did not want to call him or text him back in case it gave away his hiding spot. So, yeah. This poor mom, she's in another country and all she knows is that her son is hiding for his life and she can't do anything to help him. She's helpless. So all she can do is book him a flight home. Despite the ruptured eardrum, she just wants to get her son home. So she books him a flight for that afternoon from Varna back to Germany. At roughly 5 o'clock in the morning, a taxi driver stops on the road to pick up Lars. And this driver said that all he saw was this young guy frantically waving at him to stop. And the taxi driver already had a passenger, but he said he knew he needed to stop. This young guy was frantic. So he picks him up anyways. When Lars gets in the taxi, both the driver and the passenger, who was, I believe, a female social worker, both of them noticed that Lars, again, was frantic and that his pupils were very dilated. And I know that many people theorize that this pupil dilation was due to alcohol use, drug use, the prescription antibiotics that he was on, but dilated pupils are also a response to extreme stress, anxiety attacks, or fear. So our eyes let in more light during fight or flight, and this obviously allows you to see better if you're running for your life. And personally, I think it's kind of crazy that people say he was high or drunk or something. He told his mom that he was being followed by a group of men who may have been trying to kill him. Of course his pupils were dilated. Of course. And we'll come back to this in a minute, but just really quick, many theories say that the Cefsil 500 could have caused him to have hallucinations or paranoia or something. Like something was making him imagine that he was being followed by a group of people who were going to kill him. But he was literally attacked by a group of men. His eardrum was ruptured. Like, being followed wasn't a very far-fetched idea, you know? So he gets to the airport a little after 5 a.m. He lets Sandra know that he's there safely, and he's about 11 hours early for the flight that his mom booked. At this point, he doesn't believe that he's flying home, right? Because his ear. But I think it makes total sense that he would go to the airport just to hide out or wait for his bus ride. Like, get through security, get to the more secure waiting area, and just chill, either until your flight or until you can leave to take a bus. Like, that is exactly what I would do. I would feel much safer at an airport rather than like renting another hotel to sleep for a few hours or something. Anyway, there is footage of Lars in the airport, and you can see him walking around with his bags. And at first, like, he seems very calm. He's just walking around. Nothing seems wrong. Nobody is seen following him. He even has food in one of his hands at one point. But then things take a very, very menacing turn. On the next call to his mom, Lars asks her to send him money through Western Union. And at first, sorry about the fireplace sounds. At first, this might not seem too strange, right? But again, the circumstances around it do seem really weird, in my opinion. Like, remember, Lars asked his mom to cancel his credit card, and he told his mom that it was fine because he had enough money to get home. And he was already at the airport. Like, he had a flight booked and paid for. He had a bus ticket booked and paid for. Why did he suddenly need a bunch of money transferred to him? Like, to me, if I was in a foreign country and I was hiding from a group of people, I definitely would not want to be carrying a bunch of cash on me regardless of where I was. I wouldn't want that. But that isn't even the weirdest part. Like, the most bizarre part here to me is that neither him nor his mom had ever used Western Union before. Like, Lars had only just heard of transferring money through this company for the very first time that day in the airport. He had apparently spoken with some random stranger who was from Bavaria, and he had told him how to transfer money through Western Union. So, I don't know, something, like, what is up with that? It just seems weird. Something about that seems a little off. Like, I don't know, am I weird? Am I weird for thinking that this is weird? But something about that just seems very off to me. Like, he had just spent the night running and hiding from a group of people who he believed were going to rob him or kill him. And here he is just talking with some random guy in the airport, learning how to transfer a large sum of money. Wouldn't that kind of be like the last thing on your mind? No? I don't know. As I always say, like, on its own, that's not very suspicious, but put together with everything that happened in this case, I think it's weird. Who was this random stranger in the airport telling him how to transfer this money. Like, where did he come from? How did the conversation come up? I don't know. And Sandra said that Lars did not specify how much money he needed or what he needed the money for. He simply told her, "I need money." And I have to wonder if that group of people followed him to the airport and something happened where he was put into a position where he was being forced to pay them money. Or something. That's where my head goes. Now, a lot of people, again, believe that maybe the antibiotics he had taken had given him hallucinations or paranoia or had altered his state of mind. But Lars's mother said that when he was explaining to her how to transfer this money through Western Union, he explained the process perfectly. Like, she said he was very concise, he wasn't stumbling on his words, he did not seem out of it, he was being his normal, intelligent self, and he was definitely in his right state of mind. Like, she had no reason to believe that her son was impaired or having a bad trip from the medication, like no brain damage from the fight. She didn't believe anything like that was going on. Aside from sounding pretty freaked out from the night that he had, he was completely lucid and his normal self. So at this point, Lars has a plane ticket for 4 p.m. back to Germany, and he has a bus ticket that leaves later on that night. Obviously, Sandra would rather him take the plane home because he would get back to Germany much faster. So she tells Lars, just go to the airport doctor, get checked out, get another opinion to see if you can fly home. And strangely, Lars tells her, quote, "They won't let me fly nor drive." So many people have pondered over that statement. Like, what did Lars mean by they? Who were they? Like, was he just referring to the doctor at St. Anna and just calling him a they? Because that doctor only told him that he couldn't fly because of the air pressure, but he didn't say anything about him not being able to drive home. And Sandra had no idea what he meant by they. She didn't know who they were, and it freaked her out. She thought something sounded very strange with that. So yeah, we don't know if it meant something or it meant absolutely nothing, but Sandra was left with a bad feeling. But yeah, Lars decides to go to the doctor anyway, I guess to get a second opinion, and he tells his mom on the phone that he is covered in dirt and he looks filthy from hiding from the group of men. So she tells him, okay, go to the washroom, wash yourself up at the sink as best as you can, go and visit with the doctor, and then call me back after the appointment. After that phone call, Sandra transfers 500 euros through Western Union to Lars, and she calls him back to let him know that the money should now be available. And here's where things take another weird turn. She calls him, and the phone picks up, but Lars doesn't answer. According to Sandra, she only hears murmurs, which she assumes is probably Lars in the washroom cleaning himself up. So she thinks that he just answered his phone accidentally. And again, I'm gonna dive in with my opinion here. I think that's weird. I really, really do. Think about it. If I had just spent the night hiding and running for my life, and I knew that my mom was transferring me money, which would help me in that situation, my phone would be glued to my hand. I would not miss her phone call. I wouldn't pocket answer or dial. And if I did happen to miss that call, I would call her back immediately. But Lars doesn't call her back. The last conversation that they had was right before he went into that washroom, and they never spoke again. So in my mind, I think it makes sense that I don't know if this is far-fetched, but one thing that I have thought about is maybe he picked his phone up and didn't answer on purpose. And my reasoning behind that is, what if he answered the phone in the hopes that Sandra would be able to hear something? Like, I am wondering if one of the people who had been chasing him followed him into the bathroom, cornered him, threatened him, did something, and maybe he reached into his pocket, answered the phone just to let Sandra hear the conversation. Like, so she could hear the person's voice or the threats that were being made or some sort of important information. I don't know, but that's what I was thinking about. Let me know what you think. I think it's weird that the phone answered and all she heard were murmurs. Anyways, we know what Lars did after leaving that washroom, because he did end up going to the airport doctor for a checkup, which lasted for about 40 minutes. And he sees a man named Dr. Kostov, who examined him. So they get Lars checked in. He examines his ear, he takes his temperature, he gives him ear drops, and he says other than the ruptured eardrum, everything looks okay physically. The doctor said that Lars was, however, very preoccupied during this exam because he was fidgeting and it was very clear that he was uncomfortable. But I mean, that could have just been due to the ruptured eardrum and the pain, right? He tried to give him some pain medication to help, but Lars refused, saying that he had had a bad reaction to the medication that he'd gotten at the hospital. And this was, of course, the Cefsil 500. So that's really interesting, and I wish we had more details on that medication and how it had affected him. And just looking it up briefly, like, it says that some of the side effects of Cefsil 500 can include severe stomach pain, fever, chills, sore throat, nausea, and then some of the more serious side effects can be kidney problems, seizures, and confusion. So I'm assuming that when Lars said that he had a bad reaction, I'm assuming he meant physically, like maybe a really upset stomach or flu-like symptoms or something like that. Because again, Sandra said that he was not confused. He wasn't confused while he was talking to her. Other than the fact that he was scared, he was very coherent, very present, and again, just his normal, intelligent self. And as a mother, I'm assuming you would know your child well enough to know if they were acting strangely over the phone, if they were sounding confused, right? And going back to him being afraid, the doctor said that Lars muttered to himself in the appointment, quote, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." So I don't even know what to make of that. And the doctor tells him that he does not recommend flying for at least 7 to 10 days, but Lars would be allowed to fly that day if he really wanted to. all he would have to do is sign a waiver to get on the plane. And I guess this was saying, like, in case my eardrum gets further damaged from the air pressure, I don't blame the airline or something, you know? But I just find that weird too. Because why did the doctor at the hospital tell him that he absolutely could not fly? Like, maybe he was not aware of the airline's policy with signing the waiver, or maybe he was just being a dick. I don't know. Remember, Lars said that he was mocking him, so maybe he didn't give him that information on purpose. I just can't get over the fact that Lars said, "I don't want to die here." Like, that is haunting. And so many theories are quick to point out that this is the age where schizophrenia really starts to present itself, or that the antibiotics caused this paranoia and hallucinations. But the thing that I cannot get over is that Lars really was attacked and he really was threatened. Like, that was not made up. His ruptured eardrum was very real, and the threats made against him in the rock bar were also very real. Somebody literally said, "I can pay somebody to beat you up." So that makes me believe that the fears he was experiencing, the fact that he had been followed all the way from the hotel, this was all very real. And I think it's a very real possibility that whoever that group was, I think they could have easily followed him to the airport. Can the story get even weirder? Yeah, it can. Apparently, this airport doctor changed his version of these events multiple times. And this is in regards to how Lars ended up leaving his office. And if this is not suspicious, I do not know what to tell you, my friends. This is just beyond weird. Like, this doctor knows what happened with this patient. Why did he change his story so many times? And I'm going to tell you all about the different versions. In the first version, the doctor told investigators, "I told Lars he simply had to sign a waiver to get on the plane that day." Lars said, okay, he agreed, but he just had to go and use the washroom and then he would be right back. But he never returned. Instead, he left all his belongings and then he was caught on CCTV cameras running through the airport for his life. In the second version of this doctor's story, he said that while Lars was in his examination room, a man wearing a construction worker's uniform barged into the office while he was with Lars. And this construction worker was specifically looking for Lars. At the sight of him, Lars panics, gets up, he leaves all of his luggage, and he bolts out of the clinic. In the third version of this doctor's story, because this dude just can't seem to remember what is going on, it's almost the same as version 2. But the man who had barged into his office looking for Lars was an airline employee wearing an airline uniform, or an airport uniform. In the doctor's fourth version of this story, it was almost the same story again, but the person who barged into the exam room looking for Lars this time was a completely unknown man. The doctor had no idea who he was. He wasn't wearing a uniform or anything identifiable. In each version of the story, however, Lars panics at the sight of the guy, leaves all his stuff behind, and runs for his life. And if you think it doesn't get more suspicious than that, you are very, very wrong. After Lars went missing, Sandra hired private detectives to look for him, which I will get into in a bit. But obviously, this detective flew to Varna Airport to interview everybody that had been in contact with Lars. And this mystery man who had barged into the exam room and terrified Lars, he was obviously a very important witness at the top of this detective's list. But what do you know? Nobody knows his identity. Not even the doctor. But don't you worry, because the airport happened to find this mystery man, and they present him to the private detective. They say, here you go. This is the guy that walked into the office that day. The doctor's story is completely legit. Like, wink, wink. Can you guess what happened? I bet you can't. The private detective barely has to do any work to discover that this mystery man that the airport presented to him wasn't even in the country at the time. He literally was not in Bulgaria while Lars was there. Hello? Some of you didn't believe me at the start of this story that something weird is going on. But I win. Something fishy as hell is going on with this case. Whatever really happened in that doctor's office, like whatever the truth is in regards to why Lars got up and left in a panic, there is one thing that we do know for sure. And that is, of course, the fact that Lars was seen running for his life through the airport. And we know this because there's literal CCTV footage of Lars running through the airport without his bags. He left everything in the doctor's office except for his passport and wallet, which are believed to have been in his pockets. But yeah, he really did bolt. And the creepiest part about this CCTV footage is that it is full of cuts. Like, this is one thing that I never understand about security footage. Why is the full tape never released publicly? Like, I do not get that. Is somebody trying to cover something up, or are all of these jump cuts hiding somebody who happened to be in the video and they're following Lars? Like, what is going on? What is the point of these jump cuts? So as you can see, this video shows Lars walking calmly throughout the airport with his bags. He stops and he clearly asks a woman for directions. You can see her pointing him in the right direction towards the clinic, and then he looks like he's stopping to thank her. Then there's a jump cut and you see him sprinting away from the direction that he had just come, and no bags. And this doesn't just look like a nice easy jog. Like, he is clearly running at full pace, and it looks like he's trying to get away from someone. Then there is another jump cut. He's outside and he slows down his pace. He walks for a little bit. He seems a little bit calmer, and then he starts sprinting again. And it's almost like he is slowing down so he can decide which direction to run. He ultimately ends up running northwest to the left, and he cuts across the parking lot. And then multiple people saw him climb over an 8-foot tall fence with barbed wire on the top, and he jumps to the other side. And apparently this field that he jumped into was a huge sunflower field, and the flowers were all in full bloom. And these were like those giant sunflowers that were about 2 meters in height. And I thought that this was so interesting because, as you can see, Lars was wearing a yellow t-shirt and he jumped into a field of sunflowers. So to me, that seems like a really good hiding place to blend in. So at this point, Sandra is trying to reach her son. She calls him several times and he's not answering. And remember, she had had no communication with Lars, so she had no clue that he had been running through the airport, running from something, and then he disappeared into a forest. She has no idea that this is going on yet. She is trying to get a hold of him, and she wants to know if he has gotten the money transfer. She wants to know if he's cleared to get on the plane, if he's all right. But she's in the dark. And at this point, she knows that something is very, very wrong. She can't get a hold of him, so she calls the airport. But it's useless. Like, nobody is even attempting to help her. So she ends up calling the German embassy in Bulgaria for any sort of help. And the embassy, they are able to get her some information, but it's not very helpful. Like, and the worst part is that it's not even the truth. So they tell her that Lars did go to the doctor in the airport. He did have his ear examined, and then she's told that Lars seemed fine. He was restless, but fine, which was a lie. So I don't understand what is going on with that, because the doctor himself said that Lars was restless, he was panicking. He even said that Lars said, quote, "I don't want to die here." So clearly he was not fine. So where did that information come from? Did the doctor's office lie and write that in their file? Because clearly Lars was not fine. And then the embassy tells Sandra that Lars had to use the washroom. He left his bags in the clinic and he simply never came back. So they completely failed to mention the bolting for his life part. No mention of him running through the airport, terrified and running for his life. So Sandra, again, is completely in the dark. She can't get a hold of her son. She's freaking out. And of course, she files a missing persons report in Germany, and she hires a private detective and a lawyer from Bulgaria to help her. And one thing that I found so interesting was that this private detective, he actually went to the Hotel Color, it was kind of like ground zero for where Lars' strange behavior started. And he booked a room there, and he reported that he immediately felt that something was very off. He basically said the exact same thing that Lars had. He said that the walls were like paper thin, and it was creepy how easily you could hear other people's conversations. Like, he could hear conversations that were being had on the first floor when he was above them. And he said that this hotel felt so off to him that he would never spend a night there. So Lars was definitely not lying when he said that something was very off, very creepy about this hotel, and that he felt he needed to get out of there. Even though Sandra hired this private investigator as well as a lawyer, there wasn't really much that she could do all the way from Germany. So on July 24th, Sandra travels to Varna herself to look for her son. Sandra, her private investigator, as well as the lawyer, all go to the airport to find out everything that they can and retrace Lars's last steps. And I guess because they had a lawyer with them, they were able to access the CCTV footage of Lars, and they were able to look at footage that was never released to the public. And again, why? Why is footage like this always such a goddamn secret? I do not understand. Help me understand if you have the answer. Why wouldn't all of it be released to help find Lars? In the first video that Sandra watches, she sees Lars running around, stopping, and then running again. It's the same footage that we see, but in the unreleased footage, she gets to see Lars walking around, stopping, and then suspiciously looking in 3 different directions. He looks in the direction that he came from where the cab dropped him off. He looks in the direction of 2 police cars, and then he looks towards the field and the fence that he would eventually jump over. And the most interesting part of this unreleased footage is that the video shows Lars clearly hiding from somebody. Sandra said that he hid behind a bus, he hid behind a large sign, he hid behind a pile of sand, and then finally he ran towards the fence and he jumped over. And again, this video was never given to police and never released to the public. Why? Why was this footage not released to the public for their help? Why was this not submitted as evidence in a missing persons case? And most importantly, who was Lars hiding from? And did this footage show who he was hiding from? Sandra specifically asked them if she could see the footage of Lars actually arriving at the airport, and they told her, quote, it was not available. The footage of him actually getting to the airport was not available. Then she asked for the footage of him getting the food that he can clearly be seen holding, and she also wanted to see the footage of him entering the bathroom, but that footage also was not available. Interesting. The suspicious, fishy level is now through the roof, and I don't know what the hell is going on here. We know he arrived because there's footage of him in the airport. We know he got food because there's footage of him walking around holding that food in his hand, and we know he went into the washroom, and then we know he went into the doctor's office. Why are there holes in this footage? Why did those holes or gaps disappear? Why are they not available? Riddle me that, Batman. Something's off. Something is very, very off. I'm telling you guys, something's not right here. And this goes back to me thinking that somebody followed Lars into the bathroom and maybe threatened him. And again, maybe that was why he pocket answered his phone to try and let his mom hear the conversation. But I guess we'll never know. We'll never know if someone followed him into the bathroom. We'll never know if somebody followed behind him on his arrival to the airport. We'll never know because that magical footage is not available. And it keeps getting weirder. They give Sandra Lars's bags that he had left in the doctor's office. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh. And the only things missing are his wallet, his passport, and 3 out of the 20 antibiotic pills. So again, like if Lars had only taken 3 of these pills, any sort of psychosis reaction was very, very unlikely. And that was from like experts. So while the theory of him having like a really bad drug reaction is still possible, experts think that it is very, very unlikely, and that was not the case here. Unfortunately, Sandra's efforts to find her son haven't gone anywhere. The private investigator was unable to find any leads, and strangely, she actually ended up firing the Bulgarian lawyer. And this was really weird. She said that this lawyer started urging her to stop looking for her son. And this was like early on into his disappearance. He said, stop looking for Lars. And that is just like mind-blowing. Like why on earth would he tell her that? The hell is going on? And again, that makes me think, would he tell her that because there was something else going on that people did not want her digging into? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Even the cab driver that took Lars to Hotel Color, he couldn't be reached for questioning. Is he not a pretty important witness? Hello? Anybody? Something is not right. How could they have not found the cab driver? I don't understand. Sandra hired more private investigators to help, and in addition, the very lovely, sweet people of Bulgaria were also helping to look for him. And at one point, cadaver dogs were actually able to pick up on Lars's scent, and they tracked him for a good distance until the scent disappeared. And unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. So some people suspect that he got into a car on the highway and he went somewhere. No one knows where. And as you'd expect, they retraced Lars's steps as best as they could. They searched in all of the logical places like hospitals, morgues, hotels, but they didn't find anything. And at one point, his mother said, quote, "It's like the earth swallowed him up." He was just gone. And this is real weird, because at one point, this whole search party, this giant search party, they were hanging missing persons posters all over the city, and police were stopping them and ripping the posters down, saying that they considered it littering. What? And according to Sandra, Bulgarian police, they did not seem interested in helping to bring Lars home. Like, not at all. And one of the theories that go along with this is that because Varna is such a huge tourist area and it relies on tourism for its economy, it's believed that Varna did not want this sort of negative attention on it. Posters and media attention about a young, attractive guy going missing wasn't good for business, especially when so much of their economy relies on young tourists like Lars. They want everyone to feel safe, and a young guy going missing under mysterious circumstances just didn't look very good for them. According to Evidence Locker, the city of Varna has around 340,000 permanent residents, but over 3 million visitors come to this area every year. So clearly, tourism is very important to this city, and because of this, you really do have to wonder if the search and investigation for Lars was swept under the rug a little bit because of this. 1 year after Lars went missing, a truck driver from Bulgaria came forward saying that he had definitely picked up a young man, a young hitchhiker, who he believed was Lars. He described him as a disheveled-looking young man with no shoes. After he had dropped this young man off, he saw a missing persons poster of Lars, and he knew instantly that that had been the young man that he had picked up and dropped off. And unfortunately, that lead didn't go anywhere. Unfortunately, this is still a very open case, and if anybody has any information about Lars or possible sightings, I will definitely leave links down below where you can leave that information or read more about it. This is just such a sad and perplexing case, and as I mentioned earlier, like, an airport just seems like such a safe place to be if you were actually trying to hide from somebody, right? So what happened? Why did he run into a forest? Like, why didn't he stay put? It's so confusing. But anyways, I know the story is very I know it's been done very many times. I can't talk. I know the story has been done many times, but I am glad that I can get it out as well, just in case there's some people here who have never heard of it. I think it's important to get these kinds of stories out, no matter how old they are. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, if you have any recommendations of missing persons cases that you think I should cover next, please leave them in the comments. I would love to look into them. But yeah, thank you again for being here and for listening, and I hope you all have a good day or a good night, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.